Usually, when we talk about saying goodbye to someone, there is this kind of universal, very human script that we all follow, you know?
Well, yeah, we focus entirely on the loss.
Exactly. We just like stare at the empty chair at the table, and our immediate thought is always, how on earth are we going to survive without this person?
Right. It's pure panic.
Yeah. But what if a leader looked at their followers, the people whose entire lives were basically built around them, and said, actually, my leaving you is the absolute best thing that could happen to you?
It's a wild thing to say.
It really is. And, well, today is Tuesday, 12 May 2026, and we are diving into a text that makes exactly that counterintuitive claim. We're looking at the Gospel of John, chapter 16, verses 5 through 11 from
Yeah.
the RSVCE translation.
And just to give you the precise context for what we're looking at today, this text falls under the Eastertide reflections.
Right.
Specifically, it's Tuesday of the 6th week of Eastertide. And, it is an incredibly dense, emotionally heavy passage.
Yeah, heavy is the word.
You have Jesus preparing his closest friends for a massive, just a traumatic transition, really. And the tension vibrating through this entire text is the sheer difficulty of convincing someone that, losing their leader is actually a strategic advantage.
It is a massive claim to make. But before we get to the promise of the future and this really strange advantage he talks about, we have to look at the immediate visceral reaction that's documented right at the start of the passage.
Because it's so raw.
It is. It's profoundly human. Jesus starts by announcing his departure, saying, "Now I am going to him who sent me." That's world-shattering news for these guys.
Oh, absolutely.
But then he immediately calls out this really startling lack of curiosity from his friends. He says, "And none of you asks me, where are you going?"
That is such a fascinating psychological detail, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
he drops this existential bombshell on the room. You would expect absolute chaos, right?
Totally, like a barrage of frantic questions.
Exactly. Like, what do you mean? Or where are you going? Or are the authorities coming for us?
Can we come with you?
Right. But instead, the text implies there is just this dead, heavy silence, just blank stares.
And Jesus diagnoses exactly why they're giving him blank stares in the very next breath. He tells them, "But because I have said these things to you, sorrow has filled your heart."
That specific phrase, sorrow has filled your heart, is such a precise description of the physiological and psychological experience of grief.
How so?
Well, when you're hit with devastating news, your brain's cognitive bandwidth basically just drops to absolute zero.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The sorrow takes up all the available space. It literally, like he says, fills the heart and mind. It leaves absolutely no room for curiosity, for logistics, or, for looking toward the future.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I think anyone who has ever received a sudden, life-altering piece of bad news can relate to this.
Oh, for sure.
Imagine you're at your job, and your absolute favorite mentor, like the person who hired you, the person who champions you, the one who guides you through every single crisis,
Yeah.
calls you into their office. They sit you down, look you in the eye, and say, "I'm leaving the company. Today is my last week."
Oh, man. What happens in that room? Your executive functioning just collapses.
Exactly. Your brain completely shuts down. You don't ask, what's the new company like? What's your new title? Who are you reporting to now?
No, you're entirely paralyzed.
Right. By the immediate crushing weight of the loss, you're just sitting there staring at them thinking, what am I going to do without you? You're rendered entirely unable to ask about the long-term plan because the present moment is just, it's too painful to see past.
And that is the exact dynamic Jesus is gently calling out here. He's diagnosing a profound spiritual and emotional paralysis.
Yeah.
He knows his disciples cannot see past the pain of the immediate moment. Their sorrow is acting like a blindfold, really.
That's a great way to put it.
And he has to name that reality. He has to openly acknowledge their paralysis before he can deliver this ultimate, completely counterintuitive truth about his departure.
Right. Because they are stuck in this paralyzing sorrow, a soft pivot just isn't going to work.
No, not at all.
He has to do something drastic to shake them out of it. He has to introduce a paradox that is so shocking, it forces their perspective to shift. He has to move the conversation from the problem of his departure to the absolute necessity of it.
He essentially has to short-circuit their grief with a statement that makes absolutely no logical sense to them in that moment.
Which brings us to the pivot point of the passage. Here's where it gets really interesting, because it's probably the most striking line in the entire text. Jesus says, "Nevertheless, I tell you the truth. It is to your advantage that I go away.
Just sit with the weight of that word, advantage.
Yeah.
He isn't saying it will be okay in the end. He isn't saying you will survive this tragedy. He is saying this loss is actually better for you.
But hold on, if I put myself in the shoes of those disciples, I am pushing back on that incredibly hard.
Oh, of course you are.
I mean, if someone told me my best friend leaving or my mentor moving away was an advantage, I'd be furious.
Yeah, it sounds crazy.
How could physical absence ever be an advantage? When we love someone, when we rely on a leader, our deepest instinct is that we want them in the room with us.
We want them right there.
Exactly. To answer our questions, to protect us, to fix our problems.
It completely defies all of our natural human instincts about safety and security,
Yeah.
We equate physical proximity with safety.
So how does he justify this?
Yeah.
Because it sounds almost cruel if you don't understand the mechanism behind it.
Well, what's fascinating here is the justification lies in the strict, undeniable condition he lays out next. He explains the mechanics of this advantage by saying, "For if I do not go away, the helper will not come to you. But if I go, I will send him to you."
So it's an absolute either situation.
Precisely. The core logic of the passage rests on the principle of a necessary void.
A necessary void.
Yeah. The current structure with Jesus physically present as their localized external guide has reached its natural conclusion. If that physical structure doesn't dismantle, the next phase of their spiritual evolution literally cannot begin.
Because there's no room.
Exactly. The helper cannot enter a space that is already occupied by a localized leader.
It makes me think of a highly charismatic founder at a startup.
Oh, I like that.
In the early days, the company is small, maybe just 12 people in a room, much like these disciples. And as long as the founder is physically in the room, the company culture is just whatever the founder says.
Right. Everyone looks to them for every single decision.
Exactly. But if that company is ever going to scale globally, that centralized physical presence actually becomes a massive bottleneck.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. The physical presence goes from being a catalyst to being a limitation.
Right. For the mission to scale, the culture has to be decentralized. The founder essentially has to step away so that the vision can be internalized by every single employee, whether the founder is watching them or not.
Yes.
And that is what seems to be happening here. Jesus is decentralizing his presence. By removing his localized physical body, he's creating the necessary vacuum for this helper to arrive and internalize the mission within all of them simultaneously.
It is a deliberate, highly strategic upgrade from an external, localized leader to a new kind of ubiquitous presence. But this leads us to a crucial turning point.
Okay.
If this departure creates a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum, something has to fill it. And that completely changes how we look at this helper. This isn't just a replacement friend to keep them company.
Right.
It's a completely different operational system.
Which naturally begs the question, what exactly is this new operational system designed to do?
Yeah.
Because Jesus doesn't just say the helper is coming. He gives a very specific three-part job description.
And it's incredibly weighty.
It really is. I'll read it directly from the text. And when he comes, he will convict the world concerning sin and righteousness and judgment.
This is where the passage gets incredibly dense. Jesus takes these three massive theological concepts, sin, righteousness, and judgment, and provides very brief, almost cryptic definitions for how the helper is going to fundamentally redefine them.
Let's break these down because we really need to understand the mechanisms here. The first pillar of the helper's mission is concerning sin. And Jesus explains it by saying, concerning sin because they do not believe in me.
Now, notice what is remarkably absent from that definition.
What's that?
Well, when most people hear the word sin, they immediately think of a ledger of bad behavior. They think of breaking a list of rules, stealing, lying, failing to perform certain rituals.
Yeah, moral failures.
Right. But Jesus doesn't mention any of that.
Wait, really? He just boils the entire concept of sin down to belief. That feels almost, too simple. Why is trust or a lack of belief the root of sin?
Because Jesus is shifting the focus from the symptoms of a disease to the root cause.
Okay.
Think about a marriage that falls apart. The marriage doesn't usually fail simply because someone forgot to take out the trash or, spoke sharply one morning. Those are actions, they're symptoms.
Right, that's just the surface stuff.
Exactly. The marriage fails because over time, a fundamental trust eroded, a relational fracture occurred.
Ah, I see. So if you don't trust the map, you drive off the cliff.
Yeah.
The driving off the cliff is the bad behavior, but the unbelief in the map was the actual original failure.
Exactly. The helper is coming to reveal that the root of all human dysfunction, the absolute core of sin, is simply refusing to trust and believe in him. It shifts the entire paradigm from behavior modification to relational integrity.
That completely changes how you look at
It
morality.
really does.
Okay, let's move to the second pillar, righteousness. Jesus says, concerning righteousness, because I go to the Father, and you will see me no longer.
This one often trips people up because the connection isn't immediately obvious.
So what does this all mean? I will admit I am definitely tripped up by this.
It's tricky.
If he is leaving, doesn't that just create a moral vacuum? If the standard of righteousness is no longer a physical person you can see, doesn't that risk turning into total chaos?
That's a valid fear.
Right. How is this internal helper different from people just doing whatever their gut tells them to do and calling it righteous?
That is the exact danger if you don't have the helper. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, let's go back to your startup founder analogy.
Okay.
When Jesus was physically walking among them, he was their visible external standard of righteousness. They didn't have to wrestle deeply with what was right or wrong in a complex situation. They just watched him and copied his behavior.
Oh, like having the teacher in the classroom.
Exactly.
Everyone behaves and knows the rules as long as the teacher is staring right at them.
Yes. But true righteousness isn't what you do when someone is watching you. True righteousness is who you are in the dark.
Wow.
By saying, I go to the Father and you will see me no longer, Jesus is removing the visible crutch. The physical standard is being taken out of their sight.
So the helper's job isn't to just give them a warm, fuzzy feeling. The helper's job is to internalize the character of the absent leader.
Exactly. The helper empowers them to live out the truth, not because they are mimicking a physical person standing 3 feet away from them, but because the very essence of that leader's righteousness has been placed inside them. The compass moves from the outside to the inside.
That is profound.
Yeah.
It's the difference between following the law because a police officer is behind you in traffic versus following the law because you fundamentally believe in the safety of your community.
Exactly. It requires maturity. It is an upgrade in their spiritual evolution.
Okay. That brings us to the third and final pillar, judgment.
Yeah.
And this one sounds pretty intense. Jesus says, concerning judgment, because the ruler of this world is judged.
Before we even unpack what that means, we have to look at the grammar Jesus uses here because it is everything.
Is judged. It's in the past tense. Or, well, at least it implies a completed action.
Yes. He doesn't say the ruler of this world will be judged someday in the distant, terrifying future. He says the conviction concerning judgment is that the ruler of this world is already judged. The verdict is already in.
Okay, time out. We need to define our terms here. Who or what exactly is the ruler of this world?
Good question.
Because if I'm a disciple in the first century, I'm probably thinking of Caesar in Rome or maybe Pontius Pilate in Jerusalem. Is Jesus talking about a political overthrow?
No, and that's a crucial distinction. In the theology of John's Gospel, the ruler of this world is not a human politician or an earthly empire.
Oh, okay.
It represents the cosmic principle of evil, the dark, animating spirit of self-interest, division, and rebellion against God that operates behind the scenes of human history.
So it's the systemic spiritual darkness that drives the cruelty of the world.
Correct. And Jesus is making a staggering claim here. He is looking at his disciples who are about to face intense persecution, who are about to see him crucified, and he tells them that despite how terrible things are about to look, the definitive judgment against that darkness has already taken place. The battle at its core is over.
The forces of darkness have already lost the war, even if there are still skirmishes happening on the ground.
Exactly. And think about how that completely reframes how his followers are supposed to walk through life. If the helper's job is to convict the world that the ultimate enemy is already judged, then followers of Jesus aren't fighting for a victory.
Right.
They're operating from a victory that has already been secured.
That completely changes your posture toward the world. If you know the war is won, you don't have to operate out of panic or fear or, a desperate need to control outcomes. You can operate out of immense peace.
Which brings us full circle to why his leaving is an advantage. He is leaving to send a helper who will internalize that exact peace within them.
Man, this entire text is just a masterclass in shifting perspective.
Yeah.
We have covered a tremendous amount of ground here. Let's try to pull all these threads together to see the whole tapestry.
It's quite a journey from where the passage starts to where it ends.
It really is. We started by looking at the very raw human reality of sorrow. We recognized how sudden grief and difficult transitions can essentially short-circuit our brains, blinding us to the future and preventing us from asking the right questions.
And from there, we explored the difficult paradox that Jesus introduces. The idea that a departure, the loss of a localized, comforting presence, is actually a strategic necessity. It's the only way to create the void required for the helper to scale the mission.
Right. We looked at how a centralized leader has to step away for the culture to become the operating system of the followers. And finally, we unpacked exactly how that helper operates. Redefining sin as a fundamental lack of trust, shifting righteousness from an external rulebook to an internal compass, and declaring that the ultimate cosmic judgment against the forces of darkness is a completely settled matter.
When you look at all of that together, this raises an important question for all of us regarding our own lives. We all face transitions. We all face moments where the training wheels are taken off, or a mentor leaves, or a season of life ends abruptly. It makes you wonder, what are the perceived losses in our lives right now that are paralyzing us with sorrow?
Because if we take this text seriously, those very losses might actually be creating the necessary void for a new kind of growth.
Precisely. What if the thing we are so terrified of losing is actually just moving out of the way to make room for a necessary advantage? What if our localized comfort has to be dismantled so that a deeper internalized strength can arrive?
That is a deeply challenging but ultimately incredibly hopeful way to look at the difficult transitions we all have to navigate. It completely rewrites the narrative of loss.
It really does.
Well, as we wrap up our deep dive today, and in keeping with the specific focus of the Eastertide reflection we used as our source material, I want to offer a short concluding prayer directly rooted in this passage from John 16.
That sounds wonderful.
Lord Jesus, when sorrow fills our hearts and blinds us to your greater plan, grant us the grace to trust in the promise of your helper. Help us to see the advantage in the difficult, painful transitions of our lives.
Yeah.
Give us the wisdom to understand true righteousness even when you are unseen, and empower us to live with boldness and peace, knowing with absolute certainty that the ruler of this world has already been judged. Amen. And to leave you with one final thought to ponder as you go about your day. Jesus speaks of that cosmic judgment in the definitive past tense, because the ruler of this world is judged. If the ultimate sweeping judgment of the world has already been decisively settled, how much time and energy do we waste agonizing over the lesser, trivial judgments of our daily lives?
That's a great point.
The opinions of others, the anxieties of the moment, they all pale in comparison to a victory that is already won. Thank you so much for exploring this with us. We invite you to join us right back here tomorrow for our next deep dive.